Well, it would seem there's trouble in paradise. The ongoing nirvana in the U.S., created by the $600 in free money that is being printed out of thin air for every unemployed American, apparently may soon come to an end. Now, the official expiration date for this first round of the $600 a week in bonus unemployment benefits to every American is supposed to expire on the 31st of July, which, last I checked, is coming up in the next week or so. And so now the Republicans and the Democrats in Congress are scrambling at the last minute, as they always do, to try and come up with some extension for that program. But interestingly enough, and this is not something I was really expecting, I guess a lot of Republicans do still have some bit of fiscal reservations. I wouldn't say fiscal conservatism, because we're well beyond that, but some inkling in the back of their mind that maybe we can't just print all the money we want out of thin air, and maybe we should spend a little less, and that $600 a week is a bit absurd. And so they were proposing, as of yesterday, taking a rather draconian measure, I'm sure as many would say, in reducing the $600 a week down to $100 a week. And that would have the impact of fundamentally changing the whole situation here in America, and I think would lead to a lot more rioting than we've seen so far. The economic pain that would be felt from just taking away the heroin like that. Of course, I'm referring to the monetary heroin, all of this money that is numbing the pain of the joblessness for so many Americans. That would have severe consequences. And I have to say, I'd be very impressed if the Republicans actually stuck to their guns on that and did only extend $100 a week. I was expecting a very easy extension of this $600 a week in perpetuity. I didn't think it was ever going away, because of course, as Milton Friedman said, there's nothing so permanent as a temporary government program, and that might still turn out to be true, because now, of course, we have Mnuchin on CNBC this morning, backtracking from the position of $100 a week, saying, well, we want to have a 70% income replacement, which for most people is going to be a lot more than just $100 a week. And of course, is that 70% all coming from the federal government, or is that 70% when combined with the state unemployment benefits? That doesn't really seem to be clear. But I would imagine that 70% is coming entirely from the federal government, because it would be much too difficult to try and coordinate, I think, with all the states on that and try and do the math for every individual person. I think the way that what Mnuchin is discussing would work is that they would look at your tax returns from the previous year and say, or maybe the previous 3 years or something, and average it and say, okay, well, what were you making before you were laid off? You were making this much. Okay, we'll give you 70% of that, cut you a check every week. There you go. And administratively, that would be pretty simple. Not quite as simple as just sending everyone $600, but still fairly straightforward. Now, I don't really know what to make of this talk from yesterday about the $100 a week, because, of course, that would be a non-starter for the Democrats, and the Democrats do control the House, so they would have to get this through both chambers somehow. And so I don't know if what Mnuchin is talking about, is the new consensus position, because, of course, I imagine that the Republicans would just use that $100 thing as a starting point for negotiations. But then when Mnuchin said this on CNBC this morning, he made it sound like, well, this is, we haven't reached any agreements yet. This is just what we're talking about. So it's like, so have the Republicans already given up that much ground and you haven't even reached an agreement? So are we going to be at 100% income replacement by the time that this is over? Because, of course, right now with the $600 a week, because it's fixed at $600, some people are making less than they were before, but a lot of people are making more than they were before when they combine their state unemployment benefits with the $600 a week from the government. And that's why a lot of, lower income people are, very supportive of these, these lockdowns and don't want to go back to work, because right now they're making more money to do whatever they want. I have to say, I wouldn't be too upset right now if I were unemployed. But of course, if I got used to receiving that $600 a week, and then you take away the cookie jar, what would that make a lot of people do? It would very much, to say it would irritate them would be an understatement. It would cause a lot of pain and discomfort, and I think that would manifest itself in the form of more riots. Just as I traced the initial George Floyd riots and everything that's been going on, this whole unrest I thought was very much tied to the economic pain, even though a lot of the folks that we're seeing, like in Portland, for example, are going to be, upper middle class types, because people get restless when they're hungry, and they don't need to necessarily be literally hungry. They can just be hungry for more stuff, whatever goods it was that they are used to consuming. Maybe now somebody can no longer afford their overpriced Starbucks that's like $7 every morning, and now they have to brew their own Maxwell House at home and add their own cream and sugar. These sorts of disruptions to people's daily lives, it does irritate them, and it makes them more susceptible to flying out in a rage. They're uncomfortable, in other words. And Americans are not people who really tolerate being made to feel uncomfortable. They don't really know hardship for the most part. And of course, this is a generalization. Obviously, plenty of people have been poor before, but for those who haven't, it's not a fun experience. Now, the big implication of all this that I really am watching for is how this will affect sort of the inflation versus deflation narrative or debate that's been ongoing, because that's all dependent on how much money is really being put into the pockets of ordinary people. As I have pointed out, because of the great confidence in the U.S. dollar and the U.S. monetary system that is enjoyed throughout the world, you're not going to see any sort of a break in the dollar from investors or the financial system shorting it or something like that. You're not going to see people in the market look at what the Fed is doing in the federal government and say, oh, that's irresponsible, so we're going to sell dollars because we think this is inflationary policy that's going to have a bad impact on the value of the dollar. Nobody thinks that way. So literally the only way that we're going to see any inflation in this country is if you hand people free money that they didn't earn, money that was just printed out of thin air, that it has no tie to production, and they go and consume without producing. Because then we have all these people, dollars flying into the system trying to buy stuff, and nobody making anything for those dollars to purchase. And so what you get is that you get a much higher demand for whatever goods are available, and that leads to inflation. But if the Republicans are trying to take away the punch bowl and are trying to pull some of those dollars back out of the economy by not giving everyone their $600 a week, well, that changes the calculus quite a bit. Then we might be back on the road to deflation. Without consumers having all that extra income to go out and buy lots of useless garbage they don't need, you're going to start seeing a lot more retailers going under because there's just nobody who wants to buy that crap, and frankly, people who can't. Of course, grocery stores will still be open, and they might still have shortages because people aren't going to stop buying food. And all of this, of course, will lead to higher unemployment, and will just lead to Congress coming back and saying, okay, well, taking away the punch bowl was a bad idea, so we're going to give everyone their money back. So I still think that'll be the end result, because it's not like the reopening. It's not like you can take the money away and say, okay, well, things are reopening now, so you don't need to have this, we don't need to give out so many unemployment benefits anymore. Because in reality, what has to be done in order for things to recover, really, is you have to let everything collapse first, and the government hasn't allowed that to happen. They never let that happen. And so, of course, if they take away the punch bowl a little bit and start to let things fall apart so that the economy can begin to heal, the first thing that they will do is say, oh, no, we can't let that happen. That's bad. We felt some pain, and we're never supposed to feel pain in America, so we have to bring back the money, and they're gonna turn the spigot back on. They're gonna start pumping that well for everything that it's got. Oh, and not to mention that this morning we got pretty bad unemployment data. The first, week-over-week rise in jobless claims since March, I believe. It's been in a constant decline every week since then, and this week it finally went up, only slightly. But if you look at a chart with a bar graph of every week's unemployment claims, you can see it's very clear. It's been going down, 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 and then it looks like last week was a bottom, and then we ticked back up this week. Now I don't know if that's just that could be a rounding error. Who knows? It might just be a one-off fluke, but we'll have to watch. It's certainly, though, not something that the market wanted to see, especially with all this uncertainty over the unemployment benefits. Because, as I've pointed out, all of these exuberant unemployment benefits have been disguising just how bad things are in the economy. It's been disguising the unemployment because people have still have their income even if they're not working, so they're able to go out and buy things and patronize all these stores with, in many cases, more money than they had when they were working. Now, if that goes down to 70% of their income, well, that'll be interesting, and will, to a lesser degree, still have a negative impact on all of this consumption. Because 70% is less than whatever over 100% that people were receiving before. If you think about it, if everybody's income was cut down to 70%, well then that would mean the GDP's cut down to 70% of whatever it was. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but the folks in Washington, the way that they do their economic statistics, that looks very bad for them and to them, and I don't think that they're going to really accept that. So obviously we've got a very rocky road ahead with this, with these next few things, and I think my next update probably will be when the follow-up to the CARES Act gets passed, so I can go over exactly what's in that and what the impact is going to be. So if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.